Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the S&T Football Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Myles Garrett blockbuster trade that went down earlier this month. And we have a lot to talk about with this trade because this trade is really a franchise-changing trade for both of these teams that were involved, both the Los Angeles Rams and the Cleveland Browns. Team-changing, franchise-altering trade right here that basically shook up the NFL offseason. Everybody was tuned into this trade right here. Everybody was shocked by this trade going down. I don't know if a lot of people saw this trade coming. Myles Garrett, obviously the Cleveland Browns standout defensive end, all-pro, two-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, this guy is a future Hall of Famer for sure, but of course has been stuck on the Cleveland Browns. Is one of those, unfortunate situations where a great player is stuck on a struggling franchise. And, other than his individual achievements, as we know, football is a team sport. So even though you might be the best player in football, which Myles Garrett probably has a great argument for, unfortunately, if it is a team sport and if the rest of your team is not playing on the level that you are, you will not have success on a team level. So that is what has been Myles Garrett's experience in the NFL ever since being drafted out of Texas A&M in 2017. He has been the Cleveland Browns' best player ever since being drafted number one overall. He has been basically the spark that the Cleveland Browns have depended on this entire time in his 9 seasons in Cleveland. He has been that guy, and they have rewarded him as such. And they have kept him around by rewarding him financially. He has, obviously signed some massive contracts that we've talked about in the past. But, despite the money, no matter how much a team is paying you, they cannot bring a Lombardi trophy. And, that's an aspiration for a lot of NFL players. They're in the game to win it all. They want to win a Super Bowl. They want to say that they were champions. You know what I mean? And unfortunately for a lot of players, that never really becomes a fruition. It's a very difficult thing to do. And you kind of either just got to get lucky or you really put something together, put something solid together. A team really makes a good run and you go all the way. And we've seen many Hall of Fame level players in the past that have unfortunately not been able to say that they were able to win a Super Bowl. And Myles Garrett is kind of one of those players that, were such great players, but unfortunately never got to see that kind of success. Makes you think of guys like Barry Sanders, who was stuck on the Lions his entire career and, never won that Super Bowl. Guys like that, that just unfortunately were such great talents, but went to the wrong teams at the wrong times, So that's kind of been Myles Garrett's story so far in his career. And despite, the Cleveland Browns up and down, despite the Browns' struggles over the years, Myles Garrett just continues to get better and better each and every year. And last season, he set the single season sack record for the NFL with 23 sacks. And that was one of the, highlights of last season. And Myles Garrett was able to accomplish that. And, of course, we play 17 games now, but that was a tremendous accomplishment for him. And it was rewarded. Of course, that put, the entire league on notice. And Cleveland has been getting a lot of trade offers for Myles Garrett going back a couple seasons now. I believe they've said for a couple seasons now, oh, we're not trading Myles Garrett. We're not trading him. And it was most likely in response to the amount of interest that they were receiving from other teams. And one of those teams was the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams have been rumored to have been throwing basically everything at the Browns, trying to get Myles Garrett over to their team ever since Aaron Donald retired a few seasons ago. Aaron Donald obviously was a Hall of Famer defensive tackle in his own right, and was able to bring the Rams a Super Bowl a few seasons ago against the Bengals. And that was a great accomplishment. And that was a great success for the Los Angeles Rams. And they've been trying to get back to that ever since, have been very close year after year. They are now a Super Bowl perennial contender, have been for several years now. And of course, they made the NFC Championship game last season, lost to the Seahawks, but they're right there. They're looking to get back and making this splash trade right here. I mean, I don't know how else you can call it other than they're going absolutely nuclear. The Rams are going nuclear, trying to get another Lombardi, and they're not playing around at all. And they finally get it done. Cleveland has said for seasons now, like I said, that they're not trading him, but I guess it was too much now. The Rams finally gave something that the Browns were willing to take. So the details of the trade, the Rams send over their edge rusher, Jared Verse, and I think that was really the X factor in this trade. That was really the deal breaker. That was like, okay, the Cleveland Browns finally were able to, I would say, sleep at night knowing that they traded Myles Garrett, because they were able to get over a very good player from the Rams. Now, Jared Verse, in his own right, has been an exceptional pass rusher ever since being drafted out of Florida State just a couple seasons ago. He's a very young player. He's only in his third year. And in his first couple seasons, his first year, he won NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. So there you go, right off the bat, coming out of Florida State. And then he has basically only improved since then. This guy is a force to be reckoned with, and the Rams have been very fortunate to have him. Now, I envisioned that the Rams definitely wanted to have him and Myles Garrett at the same time, and maybe that's why this trade took so long, because just imagine Verse on one side and Garrett on the other side. I mean, I'd be having to change my draws if I was Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold or, well, I guess not Kyler Murray anymore, but Jacoby Brissett, whoever's going to be the Cardinals quarterback. So unfortunately, the Rams did have to give him up in order to make this happen. And I guess they really wanted Myles Garrett just so badly that they were willing to give up such a young, promising player that is probably going to be a, all pro in his own right, future NFL defensive player of the year, all those kind of things. So for them to give up that to get Myles Garrett, they were really wanting to get Myles over to Los Angeles. So they give Jared Verse up, who was a first-round pick himself, and then they also give up a first-round pick in 2027, and they give up a second-round pick in 2028, and then also they give up a third-round pick in 2029, which is conditional. And if Garrett is traded to another AFC North team in the future, then that would be elevated to a first-round pick. So the Rams definitely gave up a lot. I mean, basically you're giving up 2 first-round picks, one a player that has already proved himself to be worth that first-round pick. So 2 first-round picks, basically, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. That is a very big haul to get one player over from the Browns, Myles Garrett. That's all they get from the Cleveland Browns. And that just shows you the value that they are putting on Garrett to be a game changer for them and to bring them Super Bowl trophies, because to give that up for one player who, I mean, he's still decently young, but he's getting up there. He's around his 30 right now. I think he's probably turned 30. He's going into his basically his 10th season. So that's a lot to give up for one player, but the Rams were willing to do it because they truly believe in what Myles Garrett can bring to them. Now, something to be said about the Myles Garrett trade. I mean, obviously we know the impact that Myles is going to have in Los Angeles if he continues to play the way he's played his entire career in Cleveland. So I don't think I need to talk about that too much. I mean, Myles Garrett has absolutely destroyed quarterbacks week in and week out for his entire career. Some of his stats: 112 sacks in his career, 412 tackles in 134 games, 23 forced fumbles, and a touchdown as well. This guy is just an absolute stud, and he's a future Hall of Famer. Lock in first ballot future Hall of Famer Myles Garrett, especially if he can get a Super Bowl trophy in Los Angeles. So that being said, there have been rumors of Aaron Donald possibly unretiring, and it's a crazy thought. But Aaron Donald, as I stated earlier, retired a few seasons ago after they won a Super Bowl against the Bengals. Aaron Donald, he had a great career. He was a Hall of Famer, defensive tackle for the Rams. And I guess I can't really say for sure why he retired early. Obviously, he definitely dealt with a lot of wear and tear to the body. And that was probably a big decision in retiring early. He was probably tired of, being banged up and rehabbing and all those kind of things. Kind of like the Andrew Luck situation, even though he was such a great player. But for Aaron Donald, after he got that Super Bowl trophy, he was pretty much satisfied with, his career accomplishments. And, he had played football his entire life, and, he felt like he accomplished everything he wanted to do in life. So he retired and, he moved on from football and moved on to other things. But I guess a while back, maybe like a year or two ago, during the Micah Parsons trade saga and all those things, Aaron Donald had tweeted or maybe told someone something, had a conversation with a known source that if Micah Parsons Parsons was to be traded to the Rams, that he would be willing to unretire and play again. And that was a scary thought in itself, because we know Micah Parsons is a pretty good edge rusher as well. Got traded from the Cowboys to the Packers, but imagine if he had gone to the Rams and Aaron Donald had come back. I think the Rams would probably be satisfied with that, maybe not even had traded for Myles Garrett at this point. So, of course, that didn't happen. But now some rumors are being brought back up now that Myles Garrett has gone to the Rams. It's like, okay, well, if Myles Garrett is on the Rams, that's as good, if not better, than Micah Parsons. So if what was true about Micah Parsons is still true for Aaron Donald, and I'm sure Aaron Donald is still in plenty good shape. I mean, every time I see him, he's still, looking as swole as he was playing. So if what remains true and he's still willing to unretire to play with another guy alongside, because, of course, Aaron Donald was so good that he had to deal with like double teams and triple teams like every single game during his career. And that was probably a big factor in why he maybe retired early. He was just tired of getting ganged up on every game, because, that guy was just that good. It's like, no, we have to block you with two guys because one guy just cannot handle him. That's how great Aaron Donald was. But now to have Myles Garrett, you can't double team both. So if you have Myles Garrett and then you also have Aaron Donald, yeah, it's going to be a tough time for offenses. Anybody who plays the Rams is going to be in for a long night. So a lot of people are starting to say that it's possible we could see both of them on the same field at the same time, wearing the same uniforms. So I haven't heard any updates from Aaron Donald. I'm going to check into it. But if Aaron Donald unretires and pulls a Tom Brady, pulls a Brett Favre, and comes back, the Rams, I heard that as soon as they got Myles Garrett, their Super Bowl odds basically took off, skyrocketed. So I would imagine if Aaron Donald unretires and signs with the Rams, that the rocket would just continue flying high. So I would not bet against the Rams if Aaron Donald unretires. So watch out, NFL world, because next season is getting very interesting, and we're only in June. The season doesn't start till first week of September or second week of September. So we still got a lot of time. We still got training camp and preseason and all those things. So to see such a blockbuster trade like this, and of course in our other episode, the AJ Brown trade to the Patriots from the Eagles, the NFL season is getting very intriguing. And I can't wait. I can't wait for football to come back. This next season is going to be so great. We're going to be dropping so many episodes, so I can't wait for it. And one more point I wanted to touch on about this Myles Garrett, Jared Verse trade. Well, here's another thing. Another thing is that, Myles Garrett, obviously, like I said, is basically had his career saved. Basically going from, being a Hall of Fame talent that will never win a ring because you're on a team that just cannot do it. Now he's going to a team that has done it and can do it, no doubt about it. And his, obviously that has elevated his career to levels that, were out of his control now. You see the pictures of him in Los Angeles. He's smiling from ear to ear. So, shout out to Myles Garrett. He's getting his wish. On the other side, more unfortunate for Jared Verse, going from that Super Bowl contender, now going to the Cleveland Browns, who, the Cleveland Browns are who they are. But Jared Verse, going from a team that is going to basically be right there to win a Super Bowl each and every season, to now being on the Cleveland Browns, who would be lucky to not finish in the AFC North every season. That's tough for him, but he's a younger guy, so hopefully he has the time in his career to either, help the Browns turn it around or, move on to another team eventually. But more unfortunate for him on the other side. But this trade right here reminds me of the trade that went down in 2021 when the Los Angeles Rams sent Jared Goff over to the Detroit Lions in exchange for Matthew Stafford. And that trade was such a huge trade that, has gone down in history as probably one of the, biggest trades of recent memory. Definitely altered the futures of both of these franchises. And it's one of those trades that, looking back on it, even though it was such a big trade, it really worked out for both teams. And it really worked out for the Rams, and, it worked out for the Lions as well, because they've seen success that they haven't seen in prior years. Even with Matthew Stafford, they haven't seen as much success as they had, in a couple seasons since Jared Goff, and ever since the Detroit Lions were able to make it to that NFC Championship game a couple seasons ago. So like Myles Garrett, Matthew Stafford was stuck in Detroit on the Lions. And even though he was the Lions' best player, and he was the entire time in his 12 seasons in Detroit coming out of Georgia, he never really got any close to winning a Super Bowl, because the Detroit Lions were just not that team. They were a struggling franchise, even with having Matthew Stafford and a Hall of Famer, one of the best receivers we've ever seen, Calvin Johnson, which is another story of a guy that was stuck, in Detroit and never really got a chance to win a Super Bowl at all, and retired, unfortunately, before he got a chance to do that. Matthew Stafford was stuck there as well, and eventually the Rams, who had just came off a Super Bowl appearance against the Patriots several seasons ago now, against Tom Brady and the Patriots, where they lost, and they had Jared Goff as their quarterback, who they had drafted a couple seasons prior out of Cal, first overall. Sean McVay, who ever since Sean McVay took over the Rams have been a perennial Super Bowl contender, even dating back to pre-Matthew Stafford with Jared Goff. But McVay was not satisfied with Jared Goff as his quarterback, even though Jared Goff was a very solid quarterback at the time, and he still is on the Detroit Lions. He was just not as great as Sean McVay wanted. And, Sean McVay, he has an eye for a quarterback, as we know now, because Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's looking for. So he wanted a guy that was, elite. He wanted a really elite guy. He thought Jared Goff was not that. And he saw an elite player on the Detroit Lions at the time named Matthew Stafford, who was stuck there, even though he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and, was never really seen at that top level because he just couldn't get his franchise to compete at the highest level. But Sean McVay saw the vision, he saw the talent, and he said, I want Matthew Stafford. And that's what they did. They traded for Matthew, and they sent a third-round pick, two first-round picks, and Jared Goff over to the Lions to get him. And they were willing to sacrifice that and go big, and they got Matthew. And it ended up working out for them because Matthew led them to a Super Bowl in his first season. Literally, immediately proved that the Rams were smart in making that trade and knew they were willing to give it up for him because they saw the vision, and the vision came to reality. And since then, the Rams have been right there ever since winning that Super Bowl. And Jared Goff on the Lions, it has worked out for the Lions too, because the Lions have had success that we have not seen even during their Matthew Stafford years. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship game in 2023, just a couple seasons after Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl. So the Lions have also entered the championship conversation, which they have never been really a part of. I can't even remember a time the Lions were really part of that situation. Maybe they were with Barry Sanders at a time or two, but that was before I was born. So the Lions, they've been happy with the trade as well, getting Jared Goff. And of course, those picks that they got ended up being Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams and Josh Pascal and players like that have made the Detroit Lions one of the best teams in the NFL as well. So that was such a big blockbuster trade a few seasons ago that has been huge in the NFL and has paid dividends for both teams. And I think this trade as well is going to be similar between the Rams and the Browns. So shout out to the Rams. The Los Angeles Rams are definitely one of the most well-run NFL franchises in the NFL. And they prove that year after year with not only their success, but with the moves they make in the front office and the players that they sign and that they trade for and that they retain and things like that. The Rams just know what they're doing. And it has been proved and shown on the field because they are one of the best teams year after year. And they brought a Super Bowl back to Los Angeles recently, and they have been right there. So shout out to the Rams. They continue to prove that they are not scared to make those big moves and big splashes. They're not unwilling to give up first round picks to go get players that they want. And, just like Matthew Stafford, I think this Myles Garrett trade will work out for them as well. Probably will bring back another Super Bowl back to Los Angeles. So shout out to the Rams. Hopefully the Browns can follow in the Detroit Lions footsteps and kind of elevate their franchise as well from this trade and be able to start making the playoffs, and being a contender down there in the AFC North. So we'll see how the Browns respond to this trade as well. They're getting some good capital. Doesn't look like as much capital as the Lions got trading Matthew Stafford, but that's probably a quarterback versus, other position player situation. But, the Browns definitely got some good capital as well from this trade. So hopefully they use it wisely and are able to turn their fortunes around as well, getting Jared Verse, a first-round pick, and a couple mid-level picks as well. So we will see how this will affect next season, but can't wait to see Myles Garrett in a Los Angeles Rams uniform, and the Rams are going to be a force to be reckoned with. So watch out, and we'll see if Aaron Donald we'll stay updated on that. Stay tuned into that. See if Aaron Donald ends up showing up to training camp and puts the league on notice. So shout out to him and shout out to the Rams and to the Browns and everybody involved as well. So thank you very much for watching, and please tune into the next episode. Please subscribe, leave a like, and thank you very much. We'll see you next time, and peace out.